Stuck in Egypt after a Russian jet was brought down have arrived back in the UK. But thousands more could be stranded in Sharm El Sheikh over the weekend after a day of chaos that saw 21 of 29 rescue flights cancelled and planes performing U-turns in mid-air.
Well, it came amid mounting concern about security, with America announcing new measures at airports and Russia suspending all flights to Egypt. And tonight, reports about the intelligence that led to those decisions. We'll have more on those developments shortly. But first, our Middle East correspondent Sharm Tadros reports on a day of confusion and anger in Sharm El Sheikh.
Another day of long queues, flight cancellations and growing frustration. 29 planes were meant to bring British holidaymakers home on Friday. In the end, only 8 took off.
After waiting a day and a half for information, hundreds of passengers have now been told that their EasyJet flight is suspended and they don't know when they're going to be able to fly.
To be honest, the security, in my opinion, wasn't all that tight. They were just letting some cars just go past. We enter the hotel, it's all crowded, everyone's pushing around, nothing's organised, nothing's structured.
No flights today. I just want to go home. I just want to go home.
Don't know if we're leaving today, tomorrow.
Yeah. And so why didn't you just stay in the hotel and wait? Why are you here at the airport?
Just no information, really. Sorry.
The British ambassador emerged from his meeting with airport officials to update awaiting journalists. Instead, he was confronted by dozens of angry tourists.
We've been told the planes can't land. We've been told the Egyptian government are arguing with David Cameron and he's not letting any planes land. So what's the problem? You're stuttering now.
The problem is we've got to get 20 planes on board.
Can we know that? But what is the actual problem? Because there were planes that were meant to land today. We've all got texts. Yeah. We're all meant to be going home. So why all of a sudden has everything been on hold?
I would like to just talk to you, explain to you, but in a way where we can talk about your case, not in front of all these cameras.
British Airlines say they were prepared to send extra flights to Sharm to bring people home, but didn't get permission. Some of those flights were diverted on their way to Egypt. A Thomas Cook jet could be seen on an online flight tracker making a sudden turn over Albania. Sky News understands Thomas Cook, EasyJet, Monarch and Thomson flights were all diverted mid-air. The Egyptian aviation minister insists the number of planes, combined with new security measures, were just beyond the airport's capacity. Those lucky enough to board flights were only allowed to do so carrying hand luggage. New security measures mean they have to leave their suitcases behind and could have to wait up to a week to receive them. Part of the new security regime also includes stringent checks on the flight crew and airport staff. If it was a bomb that brought down the Metrojet plane last Saturday, some have suggested it may have required involvement from within the airport. And as a sign of how serious the situation has become, Egyptian soldiers are now inside the terminals. Scenes like these will start to disappear as more people make their way home. What's more likely to stick in the long term is the perception that Egypt's security is dangerously below standard. Sharm Tadros, Sky News, Sharm El Sheikh.
Now, we've got some breaking news on the investigation into that plane crash that happened over the weekend. We're hearing reports in French media about the possible cause of that crash. Well, Sky's Jonathan Samuels is at Sky News Centre for us tonight. And Jonathan, what are you hearing?
Yes, this news coming through in the last few minutes from the France 2 TV channel. Now, it's reporting that the sound of an explosion can be distinctly heard during the flight. That is according to an investigator who had access to the black box of the Metrojet plane. We know that investigators are looking at 2 black boxes, the one that records data from the flight and also the black box which records all voices in the cockpit. Now, France's BEA Accident Investigation Agency says it can't confirm this report, but the agency does have experts now in Egypt investigating the crash because, of course, the Airbus aircraft was made in France. And this follows US and British officials thinking that the plane did blow up as the result of an explosive device on board. We know that British intelligence picked up chatter from extremist groups. It's that chatter which leads them to believe that a bomb was on board. Also, there are unconfirmed reports that some British information came from listening in to a foreign government's communication, but we don't know as to which government that was. So the finger once again pointing towards an explosion on board that aircraft, and we know that there was no Mayday call from the cockpit. So whatever happened, whatever catastrophe took place, it happened extremely quickly, and that would tie in with an explosion on board.
Jonathan, thank you.
I spoke to the British ambassador to Egypt, John Casson, just a few moments ago, and I asked him first how many British tourists have managed to leave and how many are still in Sharm El Sheikh.
Yeah, let's remember, since the beginning, our objective has been to get British people home safely as quickly as possible. And today, 8 flights have left Sharm El Sheikh with around 1,500 people on board. What we're dealing with is big in scale. It's logistically very demanding. We've had to work around the clock with the Egyptians, with the airlines. And that's why we're appealing to the airlines not to bring people to the airport until they're sure there is a flight ready for them to get on. Because we know it's really frustrating for people who should be on their way home and they still don't know exactly when they'll be able to travel. But that's why we've built up a big team now of British government officials, over 50 people in Sharm now, who are able to give all the help and advice possible.
I mean, are you managing the situation? Because you say airlines should only come when they're ready. Who's telling them that people are ready to leave? Is the British government taking charge of this? After all, it's the British government which caused this situation.
We've now got a very good system in very close coordination with the airlines and with the Egyptian authorities here in Sharm. We've established a good system, and that's what's allowed us to get around 1,500 people home safely. And I think it gives us a good basis to keep moving forward and to get everyone home as quickly as possible.
Because by my count, there must be about 20,000 people, British people, who are looking to get out, who don't know when they're going to be leaving.
That's right, and that's why we're working to clarify that. Not everybody's flights are due yet. Some people are still in the middle of their holiday, and our travel advice for Sharm El Sheikh as a whole hasn't changed. So the plan is now, on the basis of the system we put in place, as people's flights become due, they stay in contact with their tour operators and their airlines, and they'll be told clearly when it's time for them to travel home as quickly as possible and as safely as possible, which has always been our objective.
We're hearing reports that an explosion was heard on the black boxes. Until then, everything was normal. Do you believe that the plane was brought down by an explosive device?
Yeah, we're working on the basis of the best information available to us. None of these investigations are complete yet, but I was there in the Cobra meeting with ministers when they took this decision, and it's clear to everybody who was at that meeting that there is a significant possibility that the plane crashed because of an explosion on board.
And do you believe that the security of passengers travelling out of Sharm El Sheikh is being improved? Because if anything, with the Russian announcement today, it appears to be getting less secure.
Yes, as you know, the government suspended British flights from Sharm on Wednesday for about 36 hours until we had put in place a package of additional security measures which would allow us to be sure that people could fly home safely. That's what we've now done. And that's why we've been able to get 1,500 people home today, and a good basis to get people home safely as soon as possible.
And finally, Ambassador, thank you for your time. When do you think that all the people who want to leave or need to leave are coming to the end of their holidays will have left Sharm El Sheikh? How many more days is it going to take?
I won't put a number of days on it just yet. We're still working through the detail. We're putting together the detailed plans. But if people stay in touch with their airlines, they will be given clear information as soon as possible. And our aim is certainly to get people home as quickly as possible. But of course, the most important thing of all is that we do it in a way that we are sure keeps people safe.
Thank you very much indeed.
So as we've been hearing, the majority of those holidaymakers are still in Sharm, but some lucky tourists have made it home. The first flight landing at Gatwick Airport a little bit earlier this evening. Our Consumer Affairs correspondent Poppy Trowbridge is there tonight. And Poppy, as we were hearing there, many people still stuck. But what are those who actually made it on that first flight? What are they having to say?
Now, Shani, as those wheels touched down, I understand a cheer went up amongst all the passengers, so relieved to be back on British soil. And when they came through the arrivals gate at Gatwick behind me, I was there, and after they hugged their families and were welcomed back, some burst into tears, tears of relief, I imagine, at finally being back where they should be without their bags, albeit. But at the same time, many of them were expressing frustration and anger at the chaos, the chaotic return effort, certainly at the airport in Sharm El Sheikh. Now, I spoke to one of the lucky ones who managed to make it out, and she said it would be some time before she ever considered going back.
We went to the airport as normal, went through all the procedures and security and everything. We got to the gate, and as we were stood in the queue ready to board the plane, we had our boarding passes in our hands. They said that, no, we actually saw on the news, on our phones, that flights had been suspended because of what had happened over the Russian plane. And we stood there and nobody really knew what was going on, and then we were told to go and sit down, and we waited for quite some time before someone came and said to us that we wouldn't be flying out because of extra security checks, but nobody really knew when we were going to get out. Eventually we got bussed from the airport back to a hotel. We spent yesterday at the hotel, again not having any idea what was going on or how and when we would get home. Well, there felt like when we went back to the airport today, there felt like there was a lot of resentment towards the British people from the airport staff. They were all very rude and very sort of rash with us. It wasn't a very nice atmosphere there. Why? At all. I don't know. Maybe they think that, you know, we've overreacted or something, but it wasn't a nice place to be, Sharm El Sheikh Airport this afternoon.
A few flights are landing here at Gatwick and at Luton, and we've been hearing from passengers landing there.
Well, I was in the airport 7 hours. All our bags and all that were on the plane. And then for them to turn around and say, Cameron's told you ain't going home. I was like, well, cheers, mate. Thanks for that.
How would you describe the situation over in Sharm El Sheikh at the moment?
Absolute shambles. It's mayhem there.
Relief. Big relief. We was lucky to get on that flight, in all fairness. I mean, if we hadn't have gone to the desk ourselves in Egypt and said, is there any seats available on this flight, we would have still been stuck there now, because there's no more flights leaving. So, to us, we're just thankful to be back, aren't we?
We're just glad to be home, if we're honest. We've never experienced such madness at an airport, if I'm totally honest. So, we're just happy we're home.
Now, I understand that the hold luggage of those passengers that have made it back today will be landing on cargo planes at both Gatwick and Luton later on this evening. But still, just a quarter of the planned return flights making it through. That leaves a lot of frustrated British tourists still in Egypt.
Poppy, thank you.
Well, yesterday, Russia criticised Britain's decision to suspend flights in and out of Sharm El Sheikh. Today, Russia has followed suit, implementing its own ban. President Putin announced that all flights to Egypt will be stopped, though it's unclear why the decision has been made today, as our Moscow correspondent John Sparks reports.
There were plenty of holidaymakers in Moscow today, getting ready to leave winter behind. And for many here in Russia, that means Egypt. 30-odd planes a day head south to spots like Sharm El Sheikh. And this group weren't going to miss a week in the sun, irrespective of what the British say. While they were checking in, however, the head of Russia's intelligence services, Alexander Bortnikov, was having second thoughts about their holiday plans.
I believe it is reasonable to suspend Russian flights to Egypt, and that applies first and foremost to tourist flights. We also believe it is necessary to cooperate with the Egyptians on the investigation.
So, there'll be no more flights to Egypt. It's come as something of a surprise. The Russians said they were looking into a wide range of theories concerning the Metrojet crash, and terrorism, well, that was just one of them. But they've changed their tune. Whether they've acquired new, compelling intelligence or the UK handed over theirs, Mr. Bortnikov didn't say. What the Russians do have is a logistical nightmare. The head of the National Tourism Agency estimates there could be as many as 75,000 Russians in Egypt. It could take months to get them out, he said. The third plane carrying victims from the crash site has returned to a nation still traumatized by this tragedy. And President Putin may get some of the blame. Now his administration accepts that trips to Egypt are unsafe. John Sparks, Sky News, Moscow.
Now, tonight, America has responded to the concerns about airport security, announcing new procedures for flights flying into the United States.
This comes after British Transport Secretary Patrick McLaughlin told Sky News flights could be grounded elsewhere if security at other airports is found to be lacking. Our senior correspondent Lisa Holland reports.
As investigators collect the wreckage of the doomed Russian airliner, if it was a bomb, as seems likely, the big concern is how the terrorists got it on board. With that in mind, it's understood British officials are now scrutinising security at other airports around the world.
We've seen the way in which the Egyptian government have responded to our request this week, which has been very cooperative indeed. And I think that should send a message to any other airport around the world that if they don't put the right security measures in place, there are consequences as far as flights and visitors to those destinations.
Paul Chambers was travelling through Sharm El Sheikh on a British Airways flight. He says lax airport security failed to detect he'd accidentally packed a diving knife in his cabin baggage.
My first reaction was, blimey, I could have been potentially, up on charges for that behaviour. And my second thought after that, of course, was that's ridiculous. To be able to get that through security, so-called, at Sharm.
But it's not just Sharm El Sheikh where questions are being asked about airport security. Amongst the Sky News viewers who emailed us with their concerns was Paul Berryman, who flew from Casablanca Airport in Morocco. He said, "The security process is nigh on non-existent. There's nothing to stop people walking through without having any of their bags or themselves checked." Helen Morris flew from Zanzibar to mainland Tanzania a few years ago. The X-ray machine was broken. Staff asked us for $2 per suitcase to pass the suitcase through without them being manually searched. We were appalled. Andrew, a British citizen living in the Middle East, told us airport security in the region is generally poor. He said, "I was shocked by Kuwait Airport when I travelled through in February. Nobody was even looking at the screens of the security scanners."
Unless we find out something new, nothing needs to change. It just needs to, the system that we already have needs to be operated more tightly.
After 9/11, then the plot to blow up planes with liquid bombs, airport security was overhauled. The Russian jet downed last weekend may be another landmark moment, this time in considering the complex task of making foreign airports step up to international safety standards. Lisa Holland, Sky News.
And we're expecting that story.